Good afternoon. Welcome to the Wednesday open public meeting of VOCC. We have on the agenda was Public Works, but they called in and didn't really have any updates today. So we have some miscellaneous and I thought I'd put them in orders. I'd like to briefly touch on a letter we approved yesterday. And then I know Kathy, you have a contract thing, and then we'll go with Kaylee. We have some parks thing, if that's okay. The letter yesterday was, it come in and it's for reauthorization of the National Landside Preparedness Reauthorization Act. And we were asked, and you get this, we got this thing at late notice that they wanted a letter from us signed by commissioners. And I don't have a problem with the letter. My only caution is I don't like these last minute things. I like to have a little bit of time. And I know that happens sometimes in Congress when you're having that. I guess all I'm saying is, I'll be very cautious not to have it be a habit.
Yeah, I think that one was out of your control completely and unforeseen. I probably have a little bit, even though I signed it, I have a little trouble just in principle because people build in places that they shouldn't build, and eventually somebody ends up paying for that. The example in the letter was about 100 and some odd homes got destroyed.
Yeah.
Through a slide in the county, and guess who paid for that?
Yeah.
You guys did.
And I share that, and that's one of the trepidations I have with this. Since this has been enacted, have we told the land you can't slide anymore? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The hubris of man never ceases to amaze me. And basically what it is, all it really is it means we can get taxpayer dollars to help fix it if it happens.
Yeah,
But it probably comes with some rules that I'm not aware of at this point in time that apply to.
I think you can be certain that there are rules, and you can be certain you don't like them.
Yeah. And it always troubles me when the Fed says Calais County, these are rules, and they know nothing about Calais County. And so I guess my only thing is, and number one, I don't think the feds, they can't stop landslides. That's more of a local thing we deal with. So I don't know what good these acts do other than gives them the ability to take it from here and put it over here. And I just don't want to get in a habit. Well, this is last minute. We got to have this done. Otherwise can't do this. Well,
maybe I'll just elaborate by one egregious example. LAX has the land from basically Sepulveda, I think, to the ocean. And prior to, well, sometime back in the 50s or in the 60s, LAX was still active. It was a big airport. And people built houses under the flight path so they could be along the beach, because Southern California beach property is pretty expensive. Well, then they started to complain about the air traffic noise, as if the air traffic noise was something new. Eventually, the city had to buy all those houses out. And when I say had to buy, is they decided to buy it. I would have just said, hey, you bought it.
yeah, you knew what you had.
Yeah.
So that's just brief commentary on that. I don't ever see, and people probably struggle with this at times, but I don't ever see government as a fix. I mean, they provide us money, but that had to come from someplace else. It's like, to me, when I see that, I look at, okay, I go out on my property, I see this big hole, and I say, I don't like that hole there. I need to fill that in. I know what I'll do. I'll take some dirt from over here. So I dig a hole over here and fill this hole in and say, there, it's fixed. That's the way government works, and it's not fixed. You had to take it from something to do this. It's not like commerce where people have an agreement and they both walk away with some sort of worth that they've gained. So I struggle with any time they start getting involved, but
and was it Sepulveda? It's one of those. It's been a while.
Yeah. Okay. Enough on that. I'm just saying I'll be cautious that if we start seeing these coming like crazy, I'll probably throw up roadblocks. Kathy?
My chair didn't want to move. Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. I just wanted to brief you on a personal services agreement that will be on the consent agenda item next Tuesday. And this is an agreement with the Community Mediation Center, which previously visited with you, I think in August of the past year. And so it is an agreement covers 2 years, 24 and 25, for a dollar amount not to exceed $80,000, which that's $40,000 a year, which is what they've previously this past year received. And they bill monthly, and it's basically a fixed price contract. And then the invoices will go to the Superior Court for processing. And they contain the budget as well for this contract.
Because the mediation they do is generates from Superior Court saying you need some, like renters not getting along, renter landlord, those type
Yeah,
of things.
they have different, most of their cases are family mediation type
Dissolution type thing.
or parent agreements, things like that when they did their presentation. Most of their agreements are that, but the landlord tenant, I believe, is a completely separate activity and it's not covered
So the
under
activity
this.
we're talking about is just the other.
Right.
And we've looked at and approved this. I know we looked at it and
Yeah, we approved it last year.
Right.
we're just getting the contract done.
Right. The first contract, there was a contract, but it covered all 3 years, but it only covered funding for 1 year. So I'm asking for us to do a new contract to cover 24 and 25 with the funding for the two remaining years.
This isn't only the court-ordered arbitration or,
Right.
what's the word I'm looking?
Yes, it's more, people come for
Mediation.
referrals and things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Are they prepared to kind of give us results of what happened this past year that we contracted? Do you know?
I'm sure
Work
that
they've
they
done?
can, when they do their monthly reports, they provide how many referrals, how many open cases, how many closed cases with their monthly invoices. So I'm sure that they can. Back in August, when they came and presented, they had up through August information. So,
Yeah, I think they're happy to present anything
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with them, but we ask all the time when we spend money, we like to know it's spent right. And so
Yeah.
I'm
and
just,
so, yeah, so I think easily we could put something together based upon all of the invoices they've already prepared for this past year. And has that data.
And then a question about the contract. In the past, I thought it was reimbursement based on an event.
Yeah, it wasn't. I went back and actually reviewed the invoices, the most recent invoices, and it's fixed price. It's
Got it.
just a monthly amount, and the annual amount adds up to $40,000. And that's
And-
what they're requesting.
And this NTE is for 2 years
Yes.
and they
And
could
not to
spend,
exceed $80,000.
and so we will just automatically give them a 24th of 80,000 every month.
Right.
Okay.
With a submittal of an invoice. They do submit an invoice and they do have records for their
it-
cases and things.
And it's got a termination clause for
Yes, it
convenience.
does. Yes,
Thank
it
you.
does.
yeah, I know them and I think they do good work, but I do think because we ask it all the time, they should be prepared to let us know what they've done with the initial 40 and what progress or things they've accomplished.
Okay.
think
I'll be sure that you
that's
have
fair.
it on Tuesday.
Yeah. good.
Okay.
Okay. I know you have this, but I also had a question for you, and we'll get into it on Riverside. I don't know if anybody's talked to you about Riverside yet or not either. Okay,
They have not. Oop,
okay.
They have not. Kaylee McKay, Cowlitz County Auditor's Office. And I've got a few things for the board regarding ARPA today. We do have a request, so I'm going to start out with that. Keenan Harvey is here to join us and give us a little more information on his request. I do believe he provided the board with some information.
Go ahead, Keith.
And we did print out extra copies if anybody needs one. So I'll hand it over to you, if you want to just do a summary of your request and then they can ask questions.
Keenan Harvey with City Council. I'm here to request $100,000 for a park replacement in the city of Kelso. To replace the Lads and Lassie Park, which is located on South Eighth and Elm Street, roughly a block away from the county line in the South Kelso neighborhood. To start, late September of 2021, it was brought up that there was a park in the city of Kelso that was in disrepair. And so we added it to the, and then we discussed the replacement based on some of the ADA accessibility requirements to replace and or repair a park anymore. You have to create ADA elements to that park. So the presentation that I gave to you through Great Northwest Recreation is the invoice, or not invoice, but the proposal that was voted on and accepted by the Kelso City Council. Since then, so that proposal doesn't include any groundwork. Our engineer's estimate was roughly $100,000 of groundwork. But this is a true community proposal and project. We have a private nonprofit that is pledged $100,000 to the project. The city of Kelso will be in for $268,000, and then I have a private contractor which is donating the roughly $100,000 in ground.
So when I add that all up, it's about $500,000.
Roughly using round numbers, I'm projecting the total project cost is gonna come in right at about the $500,000. You know, obviously we're gonna have some incidentals. No, now it is. Okay. Thank you. Obviously there's gonna be some incidentals like tree removal, and staff time, et cetera, but this project is slated to move forward in March. Part of the reason why I'm asking for funding is because the city of Kelso did move forward with allocating $268,000, sorry, the $368,000 less the private nonprofits donation, which would be the.
Is that Rotary?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have to be careful because Rotary has pledged $100,000 to an ADA, a fully ADA accessible park anywhere in the city of Kelso. So they didn't want to be pigeonholed to one location. But the proposal in front of you is what was voted on and approved for Lads and Lassies. So I need to make that distinction, and that's why I don't bring up the nonprofit. I also sit on that board, but I can't speak for that board. So that's why I purposely leave the title of the nonprofit out. But the reason why I'm requesting this funding is because I'm sure Commissioner Dahl has attended a numerous amount of meetings in the city of Kelso and heard time and time again that we have emergency street repairs and emergency road repairs that we need to take care of, including the Hostler Road area in West Vista. So if you guys did make available the $100,000 request that I'm asking for, it would alleviate a huge burden for some of the emergency repairs that we're facing now in the city.
I've been listening to the Hostler Road residents for 2 years.
Yes, and we finally have a resolution for that. We are installing some drainage and working on a proposal to improve the vistas up until Hostler. So that doesn't include the lower Hostler Road, but this, if you do make the funding available, it would provide us some relief with our ARPA funds.
So this has commitment from the city. Nonprofit is willing to get involved and then some volunteer
Yes, and
work all
a
of this.
private business is donating all of the groundwork, which engineer estimate was roughly $100,000.
So I was a little lost. The Rotary contribution is actually not in there.
The Rotary contribution is not included in the Great Northwest Recreation Plan. They have pledged it to the city to help out with an ADA park in the city of Kelso. So the $368,000 does not include that figure, no.
Got it. And one of the things government tends to do is to build something and then maintenance is a significant afterthought. What's the city of Kelso's plan for maintenance?
Yeah, so this is not a new park in the city of Kelso. So our Parks Department, which the city of Kelso is one employee, will be maintaining it as they have been. So the maintenance will be, in my opinion, reduced because we're getting rid of the bark chips and the need for reoccurring layment of bark chips, and we're replacing it with an asphalt and poured over surface, which actually meets the requirements for the American with Disabilities Act. So we're making a significant improvement to the park in addition to reducing the maintenance burden on the city.
Is there a rule of thumb that says how much, if I'm a private investor, I'm going to buy a building, and I know there's a rule of thumb that says in addition to everything, I should put aside something like 10 to 15% a year for a variety of things, including the rebuilding of the building after its lifetime. Do you have anything equivalent?
Not right now. So digging into this full parks project, I'm actually reviewing all of our parks facility maintenance plan. We actually have a parks facility maintenance plan that was put in place in 2018. And that did identify this park to be the second most needed park for repair in the city of Kelso. And that was a document produced in 2018, which was our parks facility maintenance plan. So it did build in small incidental things for the current park. But since we're moving forward with a parks replacement, the city of Kelso is likely going to have to go back and update our 2018 plan. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to. It seems like Kelso had a lot of needs, like the spray park. Is it operational now?
Still waiting on parts.
So there was an estimate, something like $600,000 to recirculate the filter, clean the water. That hasn't taken place, has it?
That is, so we have most of the parts in hand. We're still waiting on the bathroom to be built and some incidental parts for the operations of the park, from my understanding. That's not something that I am well versed on. But we do ask frequent updates, including our last Tuesday meeting from our Public Works manager.
Does Kelso have a sense of priority on their parks? Because there's, in addition, there's a not the canoe,
The kayak boat launch,
Thank you.
yes. And so that's when we update our parks comprehensive plan, the kayak park will have to be added to that as an additional park. That is a low maintenance, basically a land purchase at this time, just to allow access to the water. We're still going through the permitting, the shoreline permitting on that, but that will be added to our master parks plan. And it's important to note that the majority of the funding, that Kelso set aside $15,000 from our ARPA funds for that project, but the majority of that was funded with the help from the Port of Longview.
thank you.
You know, I think, I don't generally have issues with parks. I think they're benefits to the neighborhoods they serve. I mean, obviously, park doesn't serve the whole community, but there's communities within a community, and I think this probably serves that area. My question is more of a financial one. I think there's a lot of other players in there, so I don't worry too much about that. But we had for Riverside, we had gone out to RCO to fix the basketball courts over there, and we weren't able to get it because we didn't meet, what didn't we meet? It was some oddball thing that,
I don't remember.
yeah. And, and obviously, Riverside, it appears it's the only park in Lexington, and I think that's about $100,000 bill also, and I know they're gonna look for sources. So my question to you is, what kind of sources do we have available still through?
So we actually have the Riverside Park. The board approved a grant match for that park for 200,000. And I believe it had to do with the toilets and things like that out there. So it was a direct qualifier under ARPA. So we did allocate 200,000 out of ARPA funds for the Riverside Park.
Yeah, for the toilets and stuff, but this would be something new.
Yeah, so we would have to use revenue loss. We'd have to use revenue loss for this request as well. We currently have $272,450 available of revenue loss.
Okay. So if we wanted to do both, there's money to do both.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're not counting on anything from the 2.6.
That is still included in there. It is one of our topics for today as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're thinking, Mr. Chairman, that you're okay with this, I'm okay with that.
I am. I just want to make sure that Riverside, no offense to Kelso's Park, but Riverside is pretty big and it serves a big area, and I want to make sure that they're taken care of too.
Is it Sean Rowe that's been working on?
Well, Alyssa came in on a
Oh.
Monday. We've had departments come in and she was talking, just giving us an update. And so then we got into conversation on this basketball because the court is just not usable right at the moment. And we serve a big area over there and they have a lot of people. So we'd like to get that fixed. And she initially had went for RCO funding on that, but it didn't qualify because I wish I could remember the reason. It was some off the ball reason.
Yeah,
And
that,
so our instructions to them and her and Savannah was see if there's something around it that we have available for that. And it sounds like we may.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Alyssa and see if I can get a number and we can discuss and bring it back to the board. We also have the investment earnings on ARPA that we could potentially use for Riverside to assist with that as well.
These are things we can do that have benefit to these local
Mhm.
communities. And
yeah, I like the concept that you're pressing, which is I don't like special interests. Community-wide things are fine, but I would prioritize it, Riverside and Kelso in this case, or the Lads and Lassie Park, and we have enough for both.
yeah. And I know it's city of Kelso, but it's really close to the county. So I'm sure there's county kids that take part in that too. So.
If you look at the map, it's on South 8th and Elm, and then there's Laurel Street and Walnut. The south side of Walnut is all county in the city. So it does serve a pretty big population of the county in South Kelso.
Yeah, I don't look at territorial boundaries. I don't care what side of the street you're on.
Yeah, and it is important to note that this will be the first full ADA accessible park in the area. So right now families are traveling to either Chehalis Centralia for their Nickel Park or Vancouver to meet this
Wow.
kind of need. So it'll create a nice addition to the South Kelso neighborhood.
Because I have family and stuff up in that area, I go up by that park fairly often. It's pretty heavily used. A lot of families coming on there.
And to be blunt, this is
started baseball in that park. Of course,
this
it
is
didn't
a-
look like that back
yeah,
then. but
this is
yeah.
a very small park. So to say that it would attract the same demographic of people as
Probably not.
Nickel Park, probably not, but
I get it, but it is used up there. It's utilized.
Yeah.
I think I remember that in my history book class about that you learned baseball there.
Yeah. played for the Daily Chronicle.
Mhm.
So is that the direction?
Yeah.
You're good with that? Okay.
Yes,
We're
thank
good with
you.
Both those.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Right, we have two more things for the board related to ARPA. The first one is just really quick. So the personal service agreement that we had signed with Teresa Johnson's office, it's been a few weeks ago. I had it on the consent agenda with the board. We used the wrong form. So I am requesting that the board rescind what we signed a couple weeks ago and sign the correct form.
That's the CPA.
Yes, nothing's changing, nothing new. We just used we used the old form instead of the new one.
What makes the form old? I'm very sensitive to age comments.
It's a year old. No, it's a couple years old. We actually use it as an attachment. It's something that we get from Teresa Johnson's office. It goes over her scope of work. And we quickly got it out to the board and,
So who's complaining though?
the
I don't mind,
prosecutor.
I don't mind, by the way, but I find that as we're driven by bureaucracy, we do more stupid things.
So we did have the contract I'm gonna have the board sign for the correct version is the one we signed last time. We just used Teresa Johnson's version as an attachment. So this time we just had you sign Teresa Johnson's version and not ours that the prosecuting attorney prefers. Goes over a little more detail, has some more benefits to the county. So
Thank you.
thank you. And then the last thing I have is City of Woodland. So we still have not heard back from them. We've tried calling a few times now on top of emailing. Our last email communication that we had sent out was undeliverable after the terminations that had happened. So we did try communicating with some new individuals. We got some different names. We still have not heard back. Then the last thing that we had received was some communication about the Exit 21 project possibly not moving forward. So we just wanted to bring it up to the board again. Ask if there's any new direction or new information. And then possibly request the board's permission to send a deadline to Woodland at this point.
I very much appreciate that you're doing this. Some pretty egregious things occurred when the mayorship was changed, and the mayor had the unfortunate, the new mayor had the unfortunate plan to go to Mexico, and that's why he's largely been out of contact with us. He's back. I sent him the copy of the letter you saw that came from our colleague. And the new mayor is a bit horrified because I think it was October of last year, they signed a contract for the engineering on that. And they're on the hook for 2.6. And so if we rescind that right now, it's a little bit dicey. I don't think we're able to do that, but that doesn't mean we don't need some more information. If things aren't going to go, I want to see what kind of termination clause they had, how reasonably we can back out of that. But at the moment, I don't think we can count on pulling that back until we really understand more.
Are you referring to our contract with Woodland or Woodland's contract with the engineer for being able to pull?
Our contract with Woodland incurs a moral and ethical obligation.
So we don't have a contract with Woodland. That's actually what I've been trying to do for almost a year now.
Yeah, and I'm finding that the political infighting over there caused a lot of damage. I'm saying we've got to be above that at the moment. And if Woodland, believing it had that, and the previous administration signed all those contracts, we have to stand behind it to the point of where we can, if we must, extricate ourselves, do so ethically and equitably.
Mhm.
And I don't know where we stand on there.
Yeah.
I think maybe you and I can get together and we can get a hold of the mayor of Woodland and iron some of this out.
Yeah, that would be great.
It's unfathomable that they would not get back with Kaylee and do that, because I've been down their meetings and asked them. And the fact that they never reached out, I think the new mayor will do that for you,
Yeah.
but horrible. Yeah,
So let's make an appointment to have him come here or us go down there, whichever.
Sounds great. I will get in touch with you to get that planned.
And again,
That-
I appreciate you
Yeah.
keeping us surprised. A year is a long time to be incommunicado.
Yeah, I'm good with whatever. I just want to send the money out the door before we lose it, so.
yeah.
And an update on, they are still trying to push to get an extension for ARPA funding. They're gathering more and more information every month to try and send in that request. It hasn't been approved yet, but they are pushing for it.
The deadlines.
Yeah, to be, I believe they're requesting a 2-year extension on the deadlines.
So just off the top of your head, no firm commitment or anything, how much have we made in terms of interest rate on the ARPA money?
It's been, the first year I want to say was roughly 200 to 300,000. This last year, I believe it was around 800 to 900,000.
Okay, so, and that has been plowed back into the general fund?
Yes.
And Kathy says we spent it or it's,
And there's
Okay.
no strings attached under that?
correct. Interest earnings are ours. We keep that fund fully vested, as long as we can. We only pull out the investments as we pay the bills when they come in. So
Yeah.
trying to earn as much as we can off of it.
Yeah, a thing that makes it really strange, that contract I mentioned was signed in October with Woodland. Typically, you put down some earnest money
Mhm.
and you've never paid anything out.
Nope.
So it's
It,
strange.
they've, obviously, I mean, you look at it, you have to say there's been a lot of dysfunction there, because otherwise this would have been taken care of. I don't know whether the way you.
I
play it.
agree with you and I'm glad you're saying it politely. I'm not sure how I would say it.
Yeah, well, you just look at it and obviously that, I don't know how else you could read it.
Just what he said.
Yes.
Yeah. Sounds like Commissioner Mortensen will help you get that ironed out, hopefully.
Sounds great. All right, that's all we had for the board. And Bailey, I'll get you the updated contract for them to sign. Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
But one last thing, shouldn't you have introduced your colleague to the public? I'm just trying to embarrass you, but it's a good thing because,
With us was Camilla Eastman, the chief accountant for the Cowlitz County Auditor's Office.
thank you. Yeah.
well, unless we have miscellaneous, we can recess till 2:30 when we take up the facility district.
Yep.
Okay. We will go into recess. Okay. We will, we'll get going again here. We'll bring, the BOCC meeting out of recess. I'll turn it over to, Bob Gregory.
Thank you. Commissioner, it's my pleasure.
Green light on? Green light on? It is, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioners, we, on behalf of the Public Facilities District, we very much appreciate the opportunity to have this workshop with you. We've been for the last 6 or 7 months with Johnson, working on our master plan update. Prior to that, we did we worked on a strategic plan as a board, and we are at the final draft stage of the master plan, we really thought it was important for us to sit down with the commission, present where we're at today, have some dialogue back and forth, make sure we all have a good understanding if there's anything before we do a final document. We have an opportunity to understand your concerns and input like that before we advance it to what we would consider a final draft. There's a lot of work to do after we get the master plan document done, but we are extremely excited to be here today. I should say this is an official meeting of the Public Facility District. We have all of our board members here today too. So I'm going to officially open the meeting for the Public Facilities District also. So this is a public meeting. So with that, I'm going to, unless you have any questions, I thought I might just turn over to Charlie Johnson with Johnson Consulting. They have a presentation for you to walk through. This is really informal. We really like dialogue back and forth, answer questions as we go and do that. And then we have some items to talk about at the end of their presentation, some next steps with the board we'd like to address. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. As Bob indicated, my name is Charlie Johnson with Johnson Consulting, and we were the lead strategy, market, and finance component to the project. And with me is John Finnis, and he is with MIG, and he'll introduce himself.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm John Finnis. I'm a planner and principal with MIG, and we're really happy to be here, excited about all the hard work we put into this. We helped with a lot of the land use planning and community outreach, so got a lot to share today.
Yeah. And as we start, I want to say a couple comments. One, you are not the only fairgrounds or event center that's in this condition. I think it's a chronic state of these venues, but there's a rebirth happening across the country. Your community and your.
Excuse me a second, you said you're not the only ones in this position.
Yes.
What position is that, please?
Thank you. Most fairgrounds around the country have been treated as amenities and assets, and people know about them, but oftentimes the financial capital support is very late to come. And so a lot of communities have been addressing this, and we've worked on multitudes of them. In fact, yesterday we were up at Evergreen State Fair Park, and so they have the same issues and opportunities. In your community, this is a major asset. It bounds between two downtowns that all need help and being amplified and growing. And this is the right kind of product, an entertainment product that's appropriate for your demographics. And so there's a real opportunity, we think, as we go through our report to illustrate that to you. On the next slide, this is what we're going to be speaking on today. And it looks long, but I think we'll be able to do it in 40 minutes or so. We talk about the strategic objectives. There was some work done in the early part of 2010. A series of objectives were set forth, and we upgraded those. Okay, we can just do it this way. So these are the guiding principles. Yeah, that's okay. The guiding principles were from 2010. Look for financial self-sufficiency, and that's what I just spoke on. Address site deficiencies, and there are some. Position the facilities to appeal to a broader set of potential clients and maximize the efficiency of each entity. Well, once we've had money, labor, and land, and I think those are all exploitable and those were good guiding principles, but we've updated them. I think times have changed a little bit after COVID, and there's some other things, but we don't want to lose sight of 2010, but we want to amplify 2020. So we said provide a path forward to self-sufficiency. The only way you're going to be able to do that is with quality. And I think you already have a very good reputation. You have a good management team. We want to exploit that and really make it a further pride and joy for the community. These really need capital infusion. They can break even operationally. Very hard to address capital, and there's no dedicated funds to them. So we really need to talk about how we can use the private sector, the public sector, the city of Longview and Kelso to all think collaboratively to help raise the capital dollars that are invested in this facility. You also have a port authority and you have the PFD, which are all can work in concert together to leverage their activities. I think, you know, the partnerships, they reach out from the individual members of the PFD board, and those types of things are good. I think the community survey was really well received, but there's community colleges that want to use facilities. There's an array of other people that we think you can be better partners with to really make this a more ideal venue for the community. And then we really see this as an economic development project and a tourism project. And I think if you put that lens on the project, your attitude may shift to really amplify it and realize what the opportunities are to touch the edges of the grounds to really influence positively both communities in a very positive way. Now, next slide. So as we went through our work, we set forth a goal as we started. What we do here is not wrong. We're doing a good job, actually. We want to double down and broaden the edges of the types of events that we're serving. So to do that, an improvement plan was identified. And that really, the objective here is to really make this all a very active place all year round. You do well in penetrating the sectors that you do. Better facilities will allow you to do better and more. And that's also expanding and offering some things that's not on the grounds today is very important. So these are the factors that we look at. We understand fairgrounds very well and event centers and arenas and hotels and downtown economic development. So we take that all into context and really work with MIG and the client group. And we go back and forth until we arrive at kind of a consensus master plan that makes sense from the market, from the economics, but more importantly, from the strategy. And that's really what we're focusing on. I think if we keep strategy here, the money and other efforts will come forward. But just remember that economic development, tourism development, and stimulation of energy around both edges of Kelso and Longview. Next slide. Thank you. So you want to take over a little bit on the engagement process?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. So Charlie mentioned, this is based on a lot of really good technical information, the market study, but also a lot of ideas and opportunities we've heard from the community. So what I want to do is just quickly summarize a few things that we've heard, what we did, who we heard from, and some of the key themes that we heard from various outreach activities. So the first thing is when we think of the event center, it's really used by a number of different people. We've got users, people that pay to use the facility. We've got community groups of all kinds. And then we've got folks that are both here locally and, maybe live elsewhere, maybe nearby, maybe in a different state entirely. So the idea was to hear from as many people as possible and to get that broad perspective. So you can see on this slide, our approach. We had one-on-one interviews early on in the planning process. We had workshops, not unlike this session, focus groups, kind of larger groups talking about specific topics. I'll talk about those in a second. And then we really wanted to broaden out our approach, our scope. So we had a survey that was open access. We had a really good turnout on that, and I'll provide some highlights on that. All right, next slide. Okay, so I'll walk fairly briefly through those 4 focus groups because we got a lot of really good information from that. I think you'll see some of these themes and ideas reflected throughout the presentation and what we found. So we put these together in the same sense where we had, what's working well, what are some opportunities, what are some changes that might be needed, and then what would you like to see? So this first group was really thinking about groups and folks that use the event center. So they program space here, they reserve spaces in the past. In some cases, they come back annually or more frequently than that. So first off, assets, and I'm not going to go through line by line, but there's a lot that's working well. And what we found out pretty quickly is we're not hearing that there's a substantial change that needs to happen. There's a lot that's really working great. And so in particular, the location, you can't beat the location, great access to the region, major transportation corridors, the river, 2 downtowns, as Charlie mentioned. We heard over and over again how great the staff is that's at the facility, reserving spaces, working with things that happen while you're there. Just didn't hear enough good things about staff. The facility is very clean. Catering is great from those that reserve the facility. There's flexibility in using the space, great parking, and then pricing was a good one too. And that you'll see come up over and over again. We heard a lot about pricing is good. If I go somewhere else, if I go to Clark County, if I go somewhere else, it's going to be a lot more expensive. So that's an asset. There are also some challenges. We heard about, although staff is great, there are needs for more staffing, and we'll talk about that, especially thinking about, improvements or expansions. Technology was one, audio visual equipment, things that are built into the facility that need to be updated. Some physical characteristics, ceiling height was one. So having taller ceilings, space for storage, running out of storage space, and then some other facility type items. So some audiences, what were some things we heard about from this group about, who might we expand and try to fit more opportunities for? So first off, multi-purpose use in the horse arena. So having some more events and shows to facilitate the use that space. Smaller conventions, we heard a lot about, but of course that would require more overnight accommodations, hotel in particular. Outdoor events, there's some great events that are taking place currently, but the idea is to expand that to more types of events, soccer, outdoor recreation, and then the Columbia Theater, having more arts and culture programs. We'll talk about that more in a second too. So the vision, I think, there's a huge market out there. There's a lot of potential. So tapping more into the regional marketplace, drawing folks from Portland, Seattle, more family community events, local activities, equestrian events, very popular. So having more opportunities for equestrian events, and then breakout spaces for larger events. So entertainment stakeholders. So we did hear from folks in the local region that are already kind of putting on events and doing some of these types of activities that the event center could be doing more of. But there are some challenges, booking and availability issues. So we heard from folks at the Columbia Theater, great facility there, but there's high demand. So, what could we see at the event center? Talked about more flexibility in space needs. From a user perspective, there's some challenges. So talked about some things that are working. There's some communication needs. I think maybe that has a lot to do with, adding staff, especially as more events come online. HVAC system, climate control, cost. Not everybody felt that cost was affordable, that there's a need to keep costs down. More availability of marketing information. So knowing that it's here, what's available, more food options. So some desired events and programs. More non-local events, so bringing in more of the regional or statewide or even out-of-state events and programs. Rotating artwork was one that we heard about. That's taking place in other private venues and even some public facilities. So having bringing culture into the event center. Talked more about pricing. Food was another one, and then overall market needs, public gallery space. So I think we heard again from the art community. Having a place to showcase local artwork, smaller scale performance spaces, lodging. I think again and again, we heard a lot about lodging, overnight accommodations, and then food options. I think we keep hearing that one coming up again and again. All right, so business stakeholders. We heard from the business community, another focus group, some key economic drivers, the port being a big one, a lot of industry here, tourism, as Charlie mentioned, serving as a gateway to St. Helens and other recreational amenities, entertainment and outdoor recreation. And again, a lot of assets, a reoccurring theme, location, staff, the need for indoor space, it's at a premium here. I think we see that across the state, especially in winter and shoulder seasons. And then quality, we heard a lot about, it's a high quality event venue, but the need to keep that going. So whatever happens in the future to focus on quality. And then challenges, I think some of these are repetitive now after we've talked about the last couple of slides. Hotels being one, overnight accommodations, pricing, keeping things affordable, technology, access and wayfinding. I'll talk about that a little bit more, and then marketing and branding. So people know what the event center is and how to get there. And then the last group is sports stakeholders. The need here really is for multi-use indoor space. I think that was one of the greatest things that we heard about. So having flexibility, having more covered areas for indoor recreation. Updates to facilities, sports fields was something that came up. We did talk quite a bit with City of Longview and Parks and Recreation amenities nearby. And then some challenges, some community resistance to change. I think with any planning process, we'll obviously hear about some reluctance or some questions about what exactly are we talking about? What will those changes bring? Lodging, and then some new things that might be accommodated, more live music, including events at a bigger scale. We talked to an event promoter that said, maybe we could have a really big event that isn't something that can be accommodated right now. And then auto events, having a little bit more auto events that can be accommodated there. Okay, so survey responses, I'll try to go through this one quickly. We had an open online survey. This was available through almost the entire month of August of this past year. Good turnout. We had 649 respondents, promoted far and wide. There was a radio ad that was put out there, and a really good turnout. I mean, this was the goal, is to not just hear from people that are familiar with the event center, but people that, maybe they have been there once, long time ago, maybe they haven't quite been there yet. That's who we were really trying to get to. So from respondents, we heard from a good mix of people that live here nearby, as well as workers. So people that work in Kelso and Longview. A lot of folks that responded have lived here a long time, and different reasons that they know about the event center. So not everybody was familiar with it from the reasons you might think. And then a different age group, which is always good to have. So, kind of young adults up to older adults. So some key findings from the survey. I think, again, we're starting to see some commonalities from what we heard with the focus groups and the interviews. So more opportunities for indoor recreation. That was a very key priority we heard from survey respondents. And again, flexibility in indoor spaces, not just a facility that accommodates one sport. It's really having something that's flexible in different activities. Indoor arena use. So something that we can really expand and improve with things like dog shows, auto events, auto shows, and so on. And then renovations facility-wide. There are new parts of the site, but there are also some places that are aging. So that's something we took a hard look at, is, what do we need to start doing some uplift and facelifts on. Improved access and wayfinding, and that's a critical one. This is one we heard a lot about. It's not easy to get there, although some of us that are familiar with it, that seems unusual, but not everybody knows where it is or how to get there. And then once you're there, how do you get from, point A to point B? So it's thinking about how to get to the site and then how to get around once you're there. And then finally, lodging, again, the need for overnight accommodations and hotel space. So I'll quickly go over this, and Charlie, feel free to jump in on some of these findings. But, when we combine the technical analysis, background information, current plans and studies with our tour, what we heard and found from community outreach, we just wanted to point out a few things. First off, the event center is highly flexible. So you've got a whole range of events that take place, different times of the year, different times of the day throughout the week. Current staff, we talked about, they're doing a great job, doing the best they can, but with this growing demand and future potential, there's a need to add more staff to take on more workload. We talked about investments to the facility, to the event center itself, the Mount St. Helens room, the equestrian arena. Talk about that a little bit more later. And then event demand is strong, but it could be more diversified. And those are really part of what the recommendations we're going to be talking about today. Hotel, overnight accommodations, key need that we've heard a lot about. And then some cosmetic improvements would be valuable. So again, going back to what we heard from the survey, what we found, some of it doesn't have to be a big deal. It could be some paint, it could be some fencing and some landscaping.
As we talk about the financial and rental fee structure, their financials, oftentimes these types of venues don't make an operating profit, and you're in good stead there. So that illustrates that your pricing is somewhat in balance and you're developing the money, but nowhere near enough to really address capital. I mean, you can maybe fix a grommet or two, but you really don't have enough working capital to really do anything substantive. Also, a lot of times we go to grounds and they're not real sophisticated in their pricing. Yours is very straightforward. People ask for a setup, they get a setup and they charge for it properly. And they have a good rental program and your rent's in line. But it has to be affordable in this market. Next.
So just really quickly on existing conditions and site analysis, this is oftentimes the best way to get a big picture about what's going on. And there's a lot that's working well, but I think one of the key things we found is just, again, the location, just how amazing the event center is within the context of the river, downtown Longview, access to transportation. So there's a lot that's working well, but it's in some ways hard to get to. And so those green arrows really showing, what if you could punch through some of these larger lots, get faster walking, biking access to some of these main destinations that surround the event center, access across busy streets, looking at the appearance when you get there. Is it something you get to for the first time? Is it memorable? Do you think to yourself, boy, this is a great place. I want to come back here again and again. So those are the kinds of things that we're thinking about when we think about the site. So some constraints, but also quite a few opportunities.
And the appealing thing to me is the nature of the downtowns. There are 3 cities that come to mind that really thematically use their fairgrounds to really kind of speak to what their community is. And I don't know if you want to go there or not, but it's certainly an opportunity to play with. Cheyenne, Wyoming, Calgary, Alberta, and Denver, Colorado all have their fairgrounds right in their downtowns. And they're proud of that. And it brings all that volume into the community. The amount of demand you have here is already equal to a minor league ballpark. And so that's kind of an interesting way to frame it. And as you expand and do other things, you're going to have more volume coming to it. So how can you take that and use that in your branding of the community? Because you're right smack dab in the middle of it. And then also do other things to help improve both downtowns. If we get more volume in here, the hotels along the edges of the interstate will lift. The other types of retail will lift, but it takes layers of demand. So when Kelso does their train station someday, that will be a beautiful amenity. When Longview takes Mid Valley Golf Course and does some things to it, that'll be a layer. And then this is a major layer. This is a biggie for the community, and it really represents an opportunity to influence those areas and the adjacent areas. So as we look at the market analysis, I spoke to the rurality, but you're on the growth curve to Portland. I saw it when I was coming down from Seattle. You could feel the energy coming up. And I think that's not going to stop, so this area is growing. Right now, your citizens don't spend as much as the average US citizen on entertainment. That's because they're a hardworking, blue collar and mid-management city and community. And that makes sense to us. That's why this type of product makes even more sense in your type of market to amplify and grow. Hotel inventory, I think, is lacking in number as well as quality. I think there are some rehab opportunities on some current hotels. I think that there's some unique things that are not connected when you get to your downtown, traditional downtown in Longview. Those types of things all kind of communicate what your community is about, and that's what you want to lift. And this is an example of lifting and having a flight to quality. And that's going to permeate around. The message you send with this project influences the messages that will be received by the neighbors of the project. Industrial base, when you look at what Kelowna has done, and it's, very much a port city, but when, their port authority really spending, cranking up totem poles, stimulating, McMenamins hotels and that kind of environment, we see that kind of energy. Why can't it happen here? So that's what we would like to see. It may take a different tonality, but it'll be yours and it'll be better than it is today. And that's what you'd like to see, those energies coalesce to get you there. Next slide. When we looked at your venue, we compared it to Lane County, Clark, Deschutes, as well as a couple other ones. This one happens to be in Tennessee. But as we looked at it, we asked ourselves, you have a big population regionally, not necessarily locally, but you have a few other strengths, but your weaknesses are really related to your hotel supply, as well as the size and quality of your facilities. Your in terms of overall volume and overall attendance, you're at the bottom because you're a smaller venue, but you're also not as nice as the Lynn Fairgrounds and some of the other ones that are in the regional marketplace. And that's your issue. And you're urban. You should be doing a little bit better than a more rural event center. But they all are suffering in some regards with respect to capital, but at the same time, they have made their decisions already. And all of these have experienced an improvement program. So as we continue to look at that, next slide, please. This kind of gives you a different array of how to look at it, and it's color coded to match the characteristics. But, income wise, you have a good income, but it's regional. So your immediate income is not as high, but that's the reason we want to lift things to make it so that it's more attractive to get the incomes up. But across the board, you have a young community. Your hotel rates are competitive for sure, but your occupancy is low. That's a structural problem because you have a lot of people driving by, seeing older properties along the interstate, and they just keep driving. To see the next new La Quinta, I saw driving down brand new wood. And so that's what we want to see here in your communities. And that will come with consistently applied economic development and branding messages. Next slide. We all like to look at what happens in the businesses, and it's extraordinary. When we look at the other, they don't have anything around them. They really don't. And when you look at your situation, you have 3,000 people walking around every day that want things to do. So they like a nicer downtown. They'd like to see those buildings renovated. They'd like to see other things to happen. And then over the course of time, no one else really has that. So as you look at that, your airport's competitive. And obviously you have the amenities of a bigger city, but you're a smaller community. And that's important. That's a pleasure to have. Next slide. As we look at the largest space, obviously you can see you're quite deficient there. And what we'd like to alter, and then we look at the total space, with your small acreage and your small square footages, you can only do so much. And right now you're restricted by the size of your largest space, and you're also restricted by the absolute size. So if we modify that at the edges, we can grow the edges of our business and improve the quality of the business that we have. We may not be able to get tremendously more larger events, but we can start cycling up the quality of the events. Next slide, please. All right, this illustrates your attendance. I think what's important is I indicated that you have minor league ballpark, they may do 150,000 people a year. You're right there. So you're basically, all the cities are racing around trying to get a minor league ballpark. You got them beat already. All right. And as we look at the attendance at the other ones, you'll see that what we're missing is our fair's a little small, but we can grow that. There's a lot of competition for the fairs. And your dates, you know, they have to play with the other dates well, and you have to really be able to attract things. But you'll see that the non-fair attendance is where we can really grow. And that's what we'll illustrate to you in the next couple slides. So these are the strengths that I think we've reviewed. Regional population base, you're part of the greater Portland metro area, even though demographically you're not defined that. You saw the incomes, you know, so the income spending potential from the region is high, and you just need to bring it to your community. Daytime population, you have people walking around, want to do stuff. And then the adjacent retail, you have nice things, but there's not enough yet. And there's a lot of spaces that haven't been redeveloped yet. So over time, as the redevelopment strategies for the downtowns occur, if we have an amenity that's moving in the same direction, maybe even a little faster, because it's going to help jumpstart the other things. We'd like to see that. What we
Mr.
see-
Chairman, would you mind an interruption?
No, go ahead.
You've covered a lot of territory, and I tend to be maybe a little myopic sometime. I get hung up on something and can't see beyond that. There are many implicit assumptions, and I'd like to ask you about some of them. I don't have a particular axe to grind. I'm excited about this, but at the same time, I have an obligation here to make sure we all understand what the target is. And the target, of course, can't be a uniform target because we are not all alike. Specifically, I was going to ask before we go into further details, and I took notes, but you moved rather quickly, so they would tie together, and I hope I can do that. But primary function of us here is what is in the benefit of the public. And one thing that has been discussed here is all kind of nice, but I need to ask, how is it benefiting the average Cowlitz County residents? And I can give you lots of examples of stadia that were built, and the people around them essentially were priced out of their homes and priced out of existence. And when we talk about restaurants here, there are a lot of places to eat. They're low end. They're not the expensive ones. Probably we don't have the earnings base here to go to the high price restaurants. So we're building that for the tourist. And what typically happens with the tourist situation is, well, let's see, can I think of an example? Yeah, India. India has a large group of engineers who would develop software. They belong to a company like Infosys or Wipro, and they get paid 10% of what the engineers in this country get paid. But their company charges us half of what we would pay our staff here, so they keep the difference. I mean, there's a huge amount of money. So I'm saying we really must be sure we know for whom we're building this. And then there are lots of individual statements. That's kind of my key question. But if you don't mind, I'd like to continue this a little bit more. You addressed part of it saying this is a rural county, and but we're so good we could grow quickly, and I don't like growing quickly in some instances, but in other instances it's a good idea if the wealth kind of benefits everybody around. But there's no question it changes the profile. 50 years ago, you could have gotten anybody with a normal income could have gotten a house at La Jolla Shores or nearby La Jolla Shores in Del Mar, San Diego. Now you can buy a hovel for about 2 million maybe. And so what used to be a nice rural sleepy town is now out of question for a majority of people. When you're talking about industrial base also, we tend to be a little bit narrow here in that industrial base to us means trains, planes, and riverboats. The Port of Kalama put up a very nice park, Crest Park, and it's empty. And the idea there was to emulate, well, I'm projecting here, to emulate a little bit of what happened in Southern California, which is these little strip, not malls, but little strip offices where you'd have small incubation possibilities. And we haven't been able to get any taker there of which I'm aware. In keeping with that, you illustrated several places, several other event centers or facilities, and you said they all had capital problems. And at some point, we want to figure out what is going to make us not have the same problems that apparently stare these other people in the face. I could stop there for the moment, but
Would you like me to comment on each of those real quickly? Or,
Yeah.
okay, I think, so let's take we have a dollar that comes to the economy, okay? And it can come from the community or it can come from outside the community. So the objective is to bring dollars outside the community here. But meanwhile, you have dollars that are being spent locally by the locals, all right? And those are captured in. Where they benefit is when the other dollars come in. And we found that only 9% of your visitors come from outside your greater trade area. So you have to shift that up or down to, have it only 80%.
yeah, but the reason I don't buy that too well, it's clearly obvious that dollars coming in are going to benefit somebody or somehow. And I'm asking you to tie that not to the guy who's going to get a job as a dishwasher at the high-end restaurant, but to overall expansion of the community of the base. So, and that's where I think I'm having a little bit harder time to make the connection.
All right. This is different, but I'm going to use it as an example. Sacagawea Park. That's evolved to be what it is, and it's probably one of the most magnificent parks if you look at. All right. And as you look at this fairgrounds, it is not that. It is opposite of that. It's small and it's old and
Don't
aged.
take any offense, Kim.
It's not meant to be offensive. It's meant to be consistent with the industry. But you have one that is going to provide a resource to people that don't get greeted.
Remember, I started out with, don't misunderstand me. I'm not against this. I like this, and I have that childish enthusiasm over it, and I agree with your Lake Sacagawea example. But I have to ask the hard financial questions ultimately to understand whether I am, in this case, going to expend county efforts in some way. And I have to tell the public, this is beneficial to you. In the end, the public will really appreciate a Mona Lisa painting, but will they pay an extra dollar to see a Mona Lisa painting? If they don't have the extra dollar, they're not going to do that. And that leads me to question how many times have we done a survey and asked a question that doesn't have a downside? Would you like a better high-end restaurant there? Of course I would. But does that mean that I would be able to afford it or attend? Two different questions. And history shows that people will sign up for any freebie, but when the charge comes in, they're going to back away.
Well, my experience in these types of facilities is management and facilities and location are the drivers. Right now, you're already serving 150,000 people that go there to see events. And, I think that they would feel that the city is advancing if they could do more events locally as well as be able to have nicer facilities. And I think obviously that. Now we're saying that those 156,000 people will be better served. They'll be able to see more local entertainment. But the fact that we're going to be able to bring 160,000 more people in is going to make the capability of the management team to be able to offer more for the residents here to have more service and local entertainment and value. And as you see, your growth is coming to you. And as you see growth coming, the quality of facilities that you offer are going to be what is going to attract the things that you need to have quality growth continue. So this is a tool that communicates your brand.
Yeah, I'm not sure my questions overall could be answered, and I don't think you probably want to answer them because a lot of things you have to go out on faith, essentially. I mean, you build it and they will come most of the time. But I think for the PFD board, those are questions that I think they probably really need to digest and see, does this really change our society here or our neighborhood? And is that a change we would like? And that's a decision. Well, I'm not going to tell anybody what they should or shouldn't do, but I'm going to ask a lot of questions.
That's fair. No pun intended.
Thank you.
So what we'd like to solve is we'd like to take your weaknesses and to make them advantages. So we have to figure out a way to improve and increase the number of rooms as well as the quality, facility size, and then we'd like to enhance your revenue base. So you have making a little more operating profit, so you have flexibility to support bid fees for a sporting event or something along those lines. Next slide, please. So we have based upon our market analysis, excuse me, just got some down my throat. Conference center that you have is well positioned. It's attractive from the outside, it's aged from the inside, and the design on the inside is limited. So what we want to see is a facelift of that and an expansion that gives the facility, allows the main room in that facility to be used like a main room rather than chopped up or not used at all, and then have a variety of other meeting spaces that will support and complement that. I think that's a good thing, and that de facto becomes the community's convention center in a way. New hotel, there's one proposed for the site. That's a good step. I think you need to set a goal, say, let's have 1,000 new rooms enter the market over 5 years, and set a goal like that and make it happen. And then I think you could do something along the lines of, we would like to have a refresh program across the community. We will use tools to help us do facelifts and things of that nature to make those hotels better. I think the equestrian arena, you do a good job with equestrians. They like it here. They want to come here. You need to expand that and upgrade it to allow it to really do a little better job than you're doing today. We think that as you look at your ring outdoor arena, that permanent grandstand could be really a wonderful thing for the community. I could see that being programmed every week for something for both downtown areas to enjoy and then the broader community to enjoy. And it starts to create an entertainment scene that I think that was spoken to in our focus groups. Lastly, the big ingredient that's missing here is a large expo hall. And that would help on the horse events as well as broadening the mandate for the facility, allowing it to do other types of events, and also complement the good infrastructure that you have for your sports fields down the street. I think you could have some synergies there with sports events happening in both places. Championship dinners and things of that nature really can work in favor with each other. Next slide, please. Obviously, the river is not touched. This provides a real opportunity to connect to the river. I think that needs to be taken advantage of. And then when events are happening or when they're not happening, I would view this as a public park. So there's going to be security issues with animals and things of that nature, but we would like to see the capability to be used for people in various areas of the community, park downtown to be able to walk to the river and do some activities. We think that's a very legitimate capability to do. RV spaces, these are enormous now. They're upwards of 70 feet. So we have to think about how these horse show trailers will be, where we want to marshal them if we need to, or where we can store them on site. And you'll have 20 of those, 30 of those come in. And some of them will be dualies with big trailers behind them, but we are seeing those bigger things. So we have to recognize that on the land. Additional parking, we've been thoughtful about that. The floral building, you have some unique things in that master gardener area that I think are a real opportunity to make it. And that's right on the Kelso edge. So how can we make that neighborhood adjacent kind of feel part of that? And Mr. Mortensen, that's another area where we see the influence to their other people is just by touching those edges, you've made the community nice.
I got a text from someone who's zooming in. They're really asking you to speak into the microphone.
Thank you. And then all fairgrounds have need for storage. So we'll get to that and show you how we've illustrated that when we get to the plan. So we'll get there soon. Next slide, please. So I think these are the design principles that we'd like to have, and you can maybe comment on those just for a moment.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, so, part of this process was there's a lot of information, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of input from the users in the community. So during the process, we started to put these together, starting to think, what does this look like if you put it all together? And so one way to do that was to come up with different conceptual alternatives. So we came up with a series of different concepts. Where should some of these things be? How do they fit? How do those change? What's there now? And we did that by looking at some kind of commonalities with what are we striving to achieve? So the first is cohesion. And that's very important, thinking about the experience for anybody that's coming to this site. What are they going to remember and what's that experience going to be like? So having some cohesive design in terms of building materials, signage, landscaping, colors, you name it. That's all very important to think about. Entrances into the site as you're entering this place, knowing that it's a special place. You're about to have a really good time. You're going to see some neat stuff. So the entryways are critical, and so that's something we also took a look at. Wayfinding, I talked about earlier, both from surrounding streets, getting to the event center, and then once you're there, how do I get to the event center? How do I get to the the paddocks and the equestrian space? A campus-like environment, and this will show in a second, is something that we heard a lot about, speaking to the need for a community space. If you're here just to take a walk, connect, you're working downtown and you want to go on a nice walk, connect to the river, having an environment that's green, there's shade, you feel really comfortable being here. And then trail network integration, connecting to these important spaces, and not necessarily always having to drive. Maybe you're walking, maybe you're going on a bike ride, but integrating with that trail system to really get out and explore and connect to these spaces. So Charlie, I think the operational recommendations is.
Yeah, so we're thinking fine tuning, not wholesale change. I think you have grounds that really haven't they could be greened up a lot and improved a lot. And I think, as we look at this, we're going to increase the volume, but we also want to increase the service level to people. And I think you could charge more for that. So I think if we add a couple FTEs for marketing and branding and things of that nature, as well as maintenance and support wherever management feels they need it, I think they are short-staffed, and we've reflected an increase in the financial projections that we've gotten. Next slide, please. So as we look at this, we ask ourselves, is it mission driven, community driven, or market driven? And when we look at that, we say every one of the improvements that we've made is really mission driven. They're not mandated to make hotels happen. That's usually a city and a county economic development. But if they could contribute to that, so be it.
Charlie, don't,
yes.
don't forget, we got people that are having trouble.
Thank you. I see the difference. Okay. When we talk about community driven, that kind of answers the question that you asked, what do the locals get? And these are the benefits I think that the community gets. And then we look at market, that we think there's market demand for hotel. We think there's market demand for all of these attributes. I think the facility needs additional storage. That's behind the scenes. So the market doesn't see that, but it's crucial to make everything work right. Next slide, please.
Okay, so talking more about the physical stuff. So maybe that's the moment you've all been waiting for. But when we looked at how all these things fit together, I talked a little bit about these conceptual alternatives. And really, it's just there are different ways to put all this together. And that's what we wanted to find out. What works best and what do we think is the right approach? So I was going to show two different concepts that we worked together on with the PFD board and staff, looking at these different dynamics. So you'll see a lot of commonalities, and that's intentional. There are a lot of things that are recommended regardless of location and changes. So some commonalities, but also a few key changes. And we might actually toggle between the next two slides in a second, but you'll see two major things that stand out. And that is really, or maybe the one main thing, and that is really the location of the multi-purpose, a potential future multi-purpose indoor facility. Charlie had shown a slide earlier looking at about a 40,000 square foot facility to expand, indoor opportunities, more events, more exhibit space, indoor recreation and programs, and so on. So that's one key change. So you can kind of see the location varies. And before I get to that, just some commonalities between all the concepts that we looked at. The first is you'll notice a lot of arrows. We showed that on the earlier slide, looking at existing conditions. And again, looking at connectivity and walkability into and throughout the site. So connections to downtown, to Washington, across, busier streets. If you look at New York Street down there to the south, where this image shows the multi-purpose facility, that's roughly 2 block lengths currently. That's a lot of walking. There's nothing much there. It's a big empty field. So what if that were to be repurposed with this indoor facility? So that was one option, one way of looking at where this could be located. The future hotel, the proposed hotel, you can see that it's located directly east of the existing conference center. So now you've got a lot of activity right in the core of the site next to the conference center, people coming and going. There's great parking that's nearby. And then when events, the fair, farmers market, those are taking place, you're really close to accessing all of those things. But again, I think what we looked at with this concept is there's a really great open, undeveloped space just to the west. What if that was the location for a potential future indoor space? So that was the main thing with this one. So you can see option or concept A, we looked at what if that was west of the site on the undeveloped parcel, undeveloped space. And then concept B was another idea, which was, well, if you've got all this activity and energy going on, the future hotel, proposed hotel, the existing conference center, well, why not have that cluster of activity all right next to one another? So there's really you don't have to go very far. You could probably park once, do all three things. So that was the thought of having that connection and center of activity. Of course, with this option, if you look between the two, that would, of course, replace the parking that's there now. So you would lose parking, or potentially we'd have to replace that parking elsewhere. And that was something we heard a lot about when we talked about these alternatives was parking is important. Let's retain that. We don't want to lose out on that at all. A couple other things I wanted to touch on. The expanded equestrian center, that was something that was proposed. So using that space and adding onto it, of course, you could see with this option, that would have to be relocated. It wouldn't be enough space for that multi-purpose indoor space with this concept. So that would have to be relocated too. Some other things that are common across all of these renovations, we talked about improvements, small minor expansion to the conference center. That was something that's proposed. So adding more capacity, more space to that location. Let's see some other ones on here. Some connectivity parking improvements. I think one that we talked about, we heard a lot about, I should say, is really looking at those gateways. So on Washington to the north, making that a primary gateway and lining up with the surrounding neighborhood. So now you've got a gridded street network, you've got improved connectivity into that site. So let's move on to the next slide. And working with the PFD board and staff, we looked at these concepts. There were, I'd say some sub-concepts, A1, B2. But what we came to the realization was, this, I think the main thing was, yes, there's some commonalities we really want to see move forward, but the main thing that really works well with, I think it was concept A, is potentially citing that multi-purpose indoor space in the undeveloped piece of land that's west of the site, but bringing it closer to existing parking, the conference center, the future hotel, and so on. So with that, you're getting that center of activity, you're keeping, these major facilities together, but you're also maximizing some of this undeveloped land, and you're creating a sense of enclosure on the street front. So 17th right now, if you've walked along that, especially in the winter or, when it's hot during the summer, it's kind of uncomfortable. It's wide open. There's a lot of auto traffic. So this would be an opportunity to bring a really pleasant environment, more landscaping, street trees, and then a really nice multi-purpose space closer to the street. So we're now creating a more walkable, pedestrian-like environment, more park-like, as we talked about. Okay, next slide. Yeah, let's.
That is to kind of illustrate. So this video, I think, is that this slide? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we wanted to illustrate kind of what we're talking about in terms of the 40,000 square foot building. So we are aware of this recent design building. We thought we'd show it to you.
And if there's not a link, it might not be. Okay.
We have it, so.
We can add that. So I don't think that link is active. Okay. We can move on to the next slide. So going back to the concept, there's a lot that's in here. I think that's very obvious. The goal isn't that this is going to happen overnight. Some of this is going to take a long time, a lot of effort. So as a next step, we wanted to look at, okay, we've got a preferred concept about what we'd like to see take place. But what happens next, and what maybe is something that takes place further down the road. So this graphic shows a color-coded phasing diagram, and each color represents, a multi-year process that would need to happen, starting with that purplish red color taking place first. So this would really be what you would call the priority projects, priority improvements. And that's really the improvements to the conference center, as I mentioned, the minor expansion, technology improvements, and so on. Looking at the community plaza, we heard a lot of need for more community space. I think we just talked about, free or affordable opportunities. So that would be a priority. So adding that space in. Expanding RV overnight accommodations, that's shown to the far south. And then back of house storage, what we call the boneyard. There's a need for consolidating, more covered space and expanding where all that storage can take place. So that was really the priority for that first phase. Next slide. And so looking at kind of those four phases. So thinking about what happens day one, what do we want to look at? And then what are some things that'll probably take longer or take a little bit more time? So as I mentioned, the first phase, really looking at the conference center, plaza, RV sites, storage, landscaping, some of that street front improvements that we were talking about. Further down, we would talk about expanding the equestrian arena. Of course, that would have a lot in common and to do with where that multipurpose building would take place. We know that there's some changes that would happen with that. Improvements to the grandstand stage, wayfinding and signage would happen in this second phase, and then additional landscaping, especially landscaping that is associated with some of these other improvements. And then further out, and Charlie will talk about this in a minute, further out, what we're thinking about in phase 3 is then finding some funding and really starting to design and develop the multipurpose building that we showed you. Phase 4 is the last phase, is the trail network. And in most cases, this is oftentimes the most complex improvement. It's one of the most desired amenities here locally and across Washington. Having safe, friendly places to walk, bike, and so on, connectivity. But that's not easy. It's expensive. Oftentimes there's a lot of negotiating with property owners and easements and so on. But having that vision and keeping that as part of this plan is critical as things are implemented over time.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the results of improvements. And, these can take a life of their own. I know that the state of Washington is actually looking at fairgrounds and asking the question, what can we do to help them along? So I think there's some opportunities to help on some of these. So we don't know the speed of this, but we kind of made the assumption that it'll happen over time, but fairly quickly. And so as we've gone through this, we've looked at the demand, and I think big picture, you're going to look at 152 incremental events. That's substantive. Some of them will be smaller and some of them will be, you'll now be able to do weddings and things of that nature. You'll also be able to do a whole array of larger events. You'll have sporting events come into the equation. You'll do better and more equestrian events. And then you'll have a whole social opportunity that you'll be able to have here for entertainment. So we feel comfortable that the demand level is fine. It's going to take a lot more work. That's the reason we've recommended more staff. On the next slide, we really see almost 400,000 people attending the venue over, so that's a substantive increase, 160,000, almost doubling the nature. And you probably are going to want that volume because that's the layer that's going to start making things change a little bit. And so that's going to take a lot of work to get there, but you will get there. And I think you're also going to increase your food service quality. So the happiness quotient of people coming and leaving will improve as well. Next slide. This does speak to operations. As I indicated, you're making a profit. We think you're probably going to have to spend a little money to make more money in the future. So I think refining staff, investing in your marketing and branding and things of that nature are going to be a little more expensive. So I think you should contemplate, investment in those. But after a while, you'll start turning the corner and, your revenue should increase, your quality of service to customers should increase. And, it's going to take work to get here, but this doesn't scare us a bit. From all the event types will improve, your fare will grow. We would expect the quality of investment to be reflected in the quality of demand and revenue and expense fiscal responsibility and cost recovery that you'll be able to achieve. Next slide. It's important to think about what this means to the state and the county. And so as we look at this, as you put together your funding applications and things of that nature, these types of numbers become important. Right now, we believe that your you will ultimately employ about 70 people. And think about how that happens. You'll have a core nucleus of staff, but those events will also bring in a layer of hotel demand, a layer of retail demand. So we may not see 2 people pop up at a hotel, but they will be able to support each of those current employees and have the capability to hire more at a later date. Automatically, we're going to be leveraging the investment because we'll be seeing a hotel potentially come on site once that negotiation is finalized. But we do see this generating $2.1 million in tax revenue. That's going to be distributed all throughout the various jurisdictions. So it's hard for us to capture that $2.1 million like a retail would do. They capture that 6%. Obviously, they turn it back to the state. We don't do that. We give it to everybody, but we have to figure out that we have to communicate why everybody has to want to put it back in here. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once you happen, it starts to re-energize the revenue producer. And that's the process that you're all are in at this point in time. Next slide.
On the base on those numbers, where's that come from? When you start this growth, are you taking actuals from similar type places or?
Absolutely. Yeah. We've done all those comparisons that we had in our report. We've got the financials
Got
in
the
there as
financial
well.
data from them and
Yes,
what's
sir.
happened to them over time.
That's correct. And we know what's going to happen if you don't do anything. All right, your competition is going to be picking you off, and your residents are all going to be going to other places for their entertainment. And we don't want that. We want to switch the curve. We want to flip-flop that and have people come here as well. So these are the overall objectives that we set forth. And I think that they meet the criteria that we set forth when we started our conversation today and when we started our study. So in our judgment, this is a project that means a lot to the community. It means a lot to the city, the county, and the state. And I think as you touch the quality of this, it will permeate through the community over time. And that's what you want. You want to lift and attract and serve. And that's what these facilities are all about. So as we look at the second objective we set forth, the permanent stage will allow to increase events. I see rodeos, small truck and tractor pulls, music events, all those types of things that'll change the complexion of the operation today and make it more meaningful to the community. That connectivity with Longview and Kelso, West Kelso, I think is a real thematic opportunity. There are 3 cities that really count on that being part of their bloodstream. You want that? You have the opportunity if you want that. Next slide. So as we look at the guiding principles, we have, I think if management and the stewardship of this facility continue on the good path that they're doing, and the stewards of the community say this is an important project, you can accomplish all of these goals. And I think the management philosophy, it says economic development, tourism, and community service are all very important. And these facility improvements allow you to get there. Next slide. I think as we finalize our objectives and we leave this study, we come up with a series of objectives. We do not want, I don't think it's apropos for this facility to go another 14 years and have another study done. I think it really is important because your facilities are aging and they're declining. So I think action is needed for that. I think there's a lot of work that could be done to make this more of a financially distributed responsibility. This is a regional asset. We'd like to see regional financial participation. Partnerships are key. And then I think the economic development strategy, we talked about branding. We talked about your industrial nature and the opportunity. You talked about the economic capability. We want to emphasize all the good things that happen here with this venue. So it's really a community asset that can really make a big contribution to the community. Next slide. As we finalize our comments, there is a opportunity. In fact, was one of the PFD members going to speak to this slide? Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Bronson Potter. I'm an attorney and I represent the Public Facilities District.
Is the green light on?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Okay. So what I'd like to speak to is what steps need to be taken in order to implement the master plan. Mostly the steps are revising the terms of an existing interlocal agreement that the county and the Public Facility District entered into. The county formed the Public Facilities District in 1999. And in 2003, the county and the Public Facility District entered into an interlocal agreement that sets out their respective responsibilities with respect to the financing, the design, construction, and operation of the event center. So going forward, in order to implement the master plan, what needs to occur is first, obviously, there need to be an agreement on what improvements, expansions are made and when. So you saw some phasing concepts. So what is it and when is it? Second, the Public Facilities District would be responsible for the design and the construction of the improvements. And you see in these slides, those blocks, they have ILA and then a number following the ILA. That's where in the current interlocal agreement, these responsibilities can be found. Third, the county would refinance its existing bonds to provide funding for the expansion or the improvements. Next, the Public Facilities District would continue to impose the 0.033% state shared sales tax and pledge it to the payment of the debt service on the bonds. So just a word about that sales tax. That's not an additional tax being imposed on people. It's actually a thin slice of what the state receives, and then the state turns that over to the Public Facilities District. The county would continue to forgive lease payments on the event center as a local match for the state shared sales tax. So state law requires that there be a 33% match, local match for the state sales tax revenue. And that match can either come from a public or a private source. And currently the forgiveness of rent serves as the match for the state sales tax, and that would continue going forward. We would need to modify the lease that the county and the PFD have for the event center if improvements are going to occur outside of the existing lease area. Currently, the PFD leases about 5.2 acres from the county. And so depending on where the improvements are made, we may need to adjust the lease area. The PFD would work with the State Department of Commerce on the preparation of an independent feasibility study for any expansion. The state law requires that the Department of Commerce prepare an independent feasibility study anytime a PFD either issues new debt, enters into a long-term lease, or develops a facility. And then the PFD would work with the Public Development Authority on the hotel project. So mostly what I would like to impress upon you is we're not plowing new ground here. We're really revising an agreement that has been in place for 20 years. And we're addressing the same things that were addressed with the original development of the event center. We're just adjusting those to provide new, improved, expanded facilities that are identified in the master plan. Happy to answer any questions.
After you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm just making a note. Go ahead.
Yeah. There's a lot that has been presented, even in your small section, it's not small. And it'll take me a while to digest this. The Port of Kalama has one of the most exciting operations, and they don't collect any any taxes from the citizens at all, at least in the direct sense. This 0.033 is not a bad thing, in that I'd rather have you spend it than the state spend it. But money is fungible, as you know, so I'm not sure whether I'm making any sense at all on that one. So, how much property did you say you're looking for?
I didn't say, I said that we're currently leasing 5.2 acres, and the additional area would be dependent on what improvements are made and where. So I didn't give a
Okay.
number on acreage.
For me to say too much, it's a little loose, even though you call it a plan. I see a lot of options and I see a lot of questions still. And again, don't get me wrong, this thing will get done because you got champions. Nothing ever gets done and nothing's ever guaranteed up front. So I'm not asking for that. I'm only wanting to understand more what the picture is. And I really want the public to understand the picture, because this will change the profile of the area, probably of the entire county. And just as you encumber yourselves or encumber us, you want to be sure that you're not falling into the trap of all the other places before you. Some of the economic claims is one you want to be pretty careful of, because to the best of my knowledge, tourism is a double-edged sword, and it's a bit ephemeral sometimes and fickle. And I don't know of a society who has built itself strength solely based on tourism. And that's something I'm always concerned about, because and when you're evaluating the financials that was mentioned, one would have to be a little careful about what the universe of the investigation is. If you're asking the people who are opening up the hotel, they think it's a good idea. Expand the circle a little bit, expand it a little bit more, and get what I would call a holistic view of it. And that is more complete. Because I like this stuff, I know I have to be very careful, because that does, even at 75, I know I can be fooled and I know I can be excited just like a little boy. I don't want to encumber the public with my enthusiasm.
Yeah. I share a lot of that. And so then I look at history and I see we've been doing this for 20 years, and I think they've accomplished everything they set out to do 20 years ago. And that doesn't always happen. I may be a little biased. I'm liaison to that board, so I've gotten the chance to know them a little bit. And I don't see any one person on there that does anything out of self-ego. It's not, I want this center with my name type thing. I think they're all of one heart, that they want to provide something to our community that will be beneficial to the community. So I think they sit there for the right reasons. I can name off other places that I think sit there for the wrong reasons, and I wouldn't get behind. So, and I like my colleague, I like this kind of, I think this is good for our community. And so I'm not opposed to seeing us take an opportunity to maybe expand and look at that. And I think the current board is very, I think they're actually pretty frugal and judicious, and they want to do the right things. So I think we got I guess what I'm trying to say, I think we got a great foundation, a great base that will give us the opportunity to be successful, where I've seen others not so steady. built on sand, so to speak, that maybe not work. I think we're built on a rock here and are in a good position to move forward if that's what we choose.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that. I've described the county and government in general as slumlords. We build it, but we don't maintain it. And that's something that I think has happened somewhat at the event center. So am I unhappy with it? No, I'm a little unhappy that maybe we didn't pay enough attention to it to make sure that it is better staffed and better supported. But I'm not a finger pointing kind of guy. So I just don't know. Going forward, I want to exhort us to be sure that we do proper accounting for, we own it now, but we have to maintain it. And I know we're not trying to pick on you. We've actually opened up. You asked a straightforward question and I told you I really don't have any. So you're just a placeholder at the moment with apologies.
We do have the developers of the hotel here who I think can also address the board.
Yeah, it might be interesting to hear their perspective,
Yeah.
but I'd like to add, I was one of those people who was in support of whatever bureaucratic machinations we had to do. And fortunately, Doug Jensen, our chief civil deputy, is expert at this and make sure we did everything according to Hoyle. But I did agree and sign, yeah, if you can do it at a hotel. My hesitation there is was always based on we should not be competing against the public. And if I have any hesitancy here, I don't know where that plays in. I'll probably be a little brutal here. We have a gun range and it was sold to us before my time as the best thing since sliced bread. We're going to be bringing tournaments from the world here and so forth. And that was all built on the backs of game and anglers for the most part. And we chipped in a few bucks here and there kind of thing. My point being though, the game and anglers group is getting tired. And at the end of their contract, they're going to go away. And we've looked at the financials on it and there's just no way it can be a profit making. By profit, I mean, if we invest a taxpayer dollar and we get back $1 or more, that's sustainable. We don't get back at least $1, we're driving towards a cliff. And I want to be sure that we really don't drive to a cliff.
We have concluded our,
I did have a question, maybe in general, probably Bob could do this. We've got a phased in approach. Do we have do we have a timeline? And if you don't, I understand because there's so many unknowns. What's your target? Like the hotel target? Well, when can I have a room?
We actually have we do have the hotel developer here today, and they were going to give you a briefing on that. We've, that's actually a PDA project, but we've been working with them closely, and I think they want to give you an update on that.
Sure.
The other thing that we wanted, Betty Erickson is here, and we've been working on this legislation at the state level for the 0.033 for extending that. And there's a bill proposed, and we're looking at that's going to be another opportunity again to, if that would be successful, we can go back and take a look at what type of capital then that would give us the ability to raise, and then start thinking about some of these implementation steps and that. And I think really our goal today was just to really make sure that you guys, you all have a good understanding of what all the things that we've been doing, what we're looking at. It's been a pleasure to have Commissioner Dahl attending as liaison to meetings too, so I know he keeps up to speed there, but there's a lot of things that decisions got to be made, a lot of collaboration with the county that we need to sit back, and talk about. If we want to build expand the equestrian center, an example, there's going to be more acreage. We're going to have to talk about another lease. What does that footprint look like? And those are just going to take steps and just continuous dialogue with you. So it wasn't our expectation to have any answers and all that. Just make sure you we'll have a chance to understand what your concerns are. Your questions are really good, things that we need to go back and evaluate it in our minds there too there. And as we come back with a recommended final phasing plan and all that, I mean, all these things we gotta have, we want to bring back solutions on how it can be done too. And so that you all can feel comfortable making those kind of decisions.
Let me ask you a little bit. I'm an engineer by trade. In the past, I've always done things in what I call an initial proof of concept. And here the proof of concept is the event center already exists. But as we go forward in many engineering things, I hear they want to do all of this. And eventually collapses because it wasn't properly prioritized, properly said it, what this part should be independent of that part. Because to get a machine with 15 moving parts, you don't want to throw the whole machine out if one moving part turns out to be flawed. So I'm looking there for you to tell me, if tomorrow you could wave your magic wand, what thing would be built and what it is you need from us? Not the whole thing, just one element of the plan.
Can we come back and have that discussion with you? Because we have a board, we're going to meet on the 15th. We're actually going to start talking about that very thing, about what are our priorities and what pieces do we think we want to chew off. And again, I think part of that folds into, if the legislature extends to 0.033, that's going to give us the idea of what revenues to be and what piece can we bite off right now. And so we're just not ready to tell that, and the board needs to have that discussion amongst themselves.
Comfortable you understood my question.
Yeah.
I look at the hotel as one of those things. Regardless, I think that will be able to stand on its own.
Right.
And then is it a recreation facility? I think that'll be able to stand on its own.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we've got to come back with a plan of how it can be done too. And we're not ready to do that. So if I could, I'd like to introduce the hotel developers and let them talk a little bit about what their plans are with that. And then if we have time, Betty Erickson is here again to maybe just give the board an update on where that legislation is relative to the 0.033. So with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Devin Kumar. That's my dad, Peter Kumar. We've been running hotels. Well, he's been running hotels for
Make
about,
sure you speak closely to the microphone.
so he's been running hotels about 40 years now, built and operated himself. He built the Woodland Best Western Comfort Suites on the airport. I've done a lot of remodeling conversions throughout the years. We currently operate about 4 to 5 hotels right now. For the site, we've picked out Hilton by Hampton Inn. The reason for picking out Hilton and the brand that Hampton is #1 worldwide right now. Hilton gives a perspective for the community luxury brand, and it gives a quality to the guest. And it will also, we checked Roseburg Market. If you heard of Roseburg, Oregon, they built a brand new Hampton Inn right now. They're doing about 90% occupancy year round, which is very good. The hotel will be able to stand itself, I feel, even without the expansions and all that as well, because in the Longview market right now, the hotels are dying. They're not that great. They're very old, not trending anymore.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I think what happens sometimes when you spur new stuff like that comes in, others have to step up their game, so to speak. So I think it has the potential to lift other boats.
Oh yeah. With a new hotel coming in to the event center, it will bring more driving factors as well. The hotel, usually Hilton gives about 60% reservations to the hotel right away the day you open. So that'll also give the clients, the customers, everyone coming to that market, they see everything happening, not just the hotel. They'll see your guys' event center, what's happening in the community. When these type of hotels come into these these sites, it's very hard to get a Hampton Inn brand or Hilton brand unless you've been doing this for a
Yeah.
long time. They don't just approve it. It took me about 6 months to convince the Hilton franchisees to even approve this project. We were looking at Marriott, but I think Hilton is the best fit for this site. And it's already signed. We've already signed with them. We've paid the application fees and we're already on our way to doing the architectural designs. Right now, I'm working with a few architectural design firms. We're trying to build an 80 to 100 unit hotel with a rooftop bar in a vision of it. So we're trying to see how that's going to work out structurally.
Yeah, I know the new hotel built in Centralia off of Mellon Street. It's built by a classmate of mine. And it started off pretty strong and there's already things looking to go in and around it. So I know it drives some other economic benefits when that happens.
Because
That's the magic of competition, isn't it?
Yeah,
I like it.
yeah.
So what kind of timeline do you see and what are the stumbling blocks that make that timeline as long as the number you're gonna give us?
So usually the timeline is 2 years for construction, about 6 months for design, but the interest rates right now don't help our project. We had to get bank financing, of course, for this project. We have the money to do it secured with other assets, and it's right now hotel business with everything going on in the economy. We have to really watch what's gonna happen with the hotel because it's like a up and down business. It's not always high. Like if something like COVID would happen to the economy again, that would really hurt the higher end hotel like a Hampton. I mean, your lower end hotels will fill with the transient business all the time, but the higher end hotels need tourism. They need study business to come to them.
So I'm looking for a statement that says, we would be breaking ground tomorrow, except that we need A, B, and C.
We can break ground. You give me the money, I'll break ground today.
Oh,
So it's just when financing's in place, you're ready to go.
Yes, but the interest rate is very, very high right now, but we've
Yeah.
already signed with the brand, so we are moving along. We will build there. But we just gotta make sure that everything is perfect before.
well, that, that opens up the question of when would you foresee this unfavorable interest rate being resolved for you?
I mean, it all depends in the near future right now. We can build even with the high interest rate. If you have demand coming to the hotel, we can build right now, right? So it all depends on how the demand of the event center will occur for the hotel as well.
Well, I don't remember all the details of the ILA or whatever it is we have with the PDA, but they're on a timeline.
Yes, I'm aware of the timeline.
And it's pretty close, isn't it?
Yeah, we have a design coming in right now. So we're already working with architects to design the structure of the hotel. We're trying to see if we can break ground about the summer this year. That's what we're trying to do, end of summer, beginning, depending on how fast we can get the plans drawn up.
Okay. Yeah, just for the public to know, we've been on this for 4 years, 5 years. Probably Bob knows, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I've learned in the past, that there's never a good time to do something except now. Because otherwise, well, if only. Anyhow,
No. Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Betty.
I'm Betty Erickson. I'm on the Collett's PFD Board of Directors. I'm also the state chair for all the public facilities districts. So I've been working with Senator Wilson on getting another bill passed up in the legislature. And on January 18th, I testified in front of the Government, Land Use, and Tribal Affairs. And they decided, then they had an executive meeting on January 30th. And there was a couple small amendments that were put in it. There was a facility, and everyone thought that maybe only the PFDs had one facility. So we changed that to a facility. And 6158 was amended and approved by the committee, and it's on its ways to the Ways and Means, then to the Senate on floor vote, and then to the House. And I'm hoping it'll pass.
And how long would it extend that out?
65 years.
65 years?
Mhm.
I see they just took the rural one out to 2054, so.
Yeah,
So this would add another 65 years, which really calculates into the bonding power you have.
right. And as long as we keep our bond, we don't pay our bond off, we'll continue to collect the monies. Once our bonds are retired, we can no longer collect the sales tax.
Right.
And we collect 0.033 for the public, or for the fairgrounds. And we collect 0.020 for the Columbia Theater.
Yeah.
There's only two PFDs that collect the 0.20. It's Longview and Yakima.
And as my colleague pointed out, this is not an additional tax. We're getting a
No,
refund from an existing tax,
It's in a
like,
way,
like the rural.
it's all the sales tax
facilities
that's
is.
collected in Cowlitz County that goes up to the government or to the or to the state. We collect 0.033 and 0.020
Yeah.
out of what's collected in Cowlitz County. It doesn't come from the whole state.
Right. And I agree with him. I'd rather see you spend it than the state spend it.
And it's not a new tax. We're not collecting anything new.
So if they do pass that and they extend that out 65 years, then the biggest benefit to us is the bonding ability to do what
Exactly.
you need to do.
Yes. And I'm not, the last time we did this was in 2017. And that was bill, I can't remember the number now, 210 or something like that, 2010. It took 2 years to get it passed. Well, the first year they didn't have the Columbia Theater and Yakima Theater in it. So I stopped that bill because if we had passed that, we wouldn't have been able to, because we needed to put a chiller in at the Columbia Theater. So I stopped that bill and then the next year it went through. But this is a short session, so they're going to be done in March. So the chances of this passing this year are pretty slim. Yeah. Knock on wood. But I'm hoping it will. But I keep going up to Olympia and talking to, and we have a lobbyist that works with the state public facilities district. So I go talk with him and then I go talk to the legislators, and so I spend a lot of time in Olympia when we're getting a bill passed. And I have copies of the bill here that I'm going to give you so that you'll know what it all says.
Do you need anything from us?
Pardon me?
Do you need anything from us?
I can't hear you.
Do you need anything? Do you want us to do something to help you is the question.
If you have a lobbyist, that would be great. You could talk them into, helping get this bill going, or your legislatures.
Yeah, the legislators, we're all friends with them, so I think that's an automatic. The
Right.
lobbyists, we only have federal
You're gonna give
lobbyists.
me a copy of that bill?
Yes.
Cause tomorrow I am up for our legislative steering committee for Wasac, and
Okay,
so
good.
hand that to me.
Yeah. Well, Jeff Wilson told me that he's never had a bill that didn't pass. So
He's never had a bill that did not pass?
that did not pass.
Right, that's because he's tricky. He makes it appear like it's someone else's bill.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to start giving
But it
him a
works
bad
now.
time about collecting governor's pins.
And I've had meetings with Jim Walsh and Joel.
Yeah,
So, and when I did this before, I was working with Dean Tacko and Brian Blake. So I've been on both sides of the fence here.
well, I don't think any side of the fence should have any qualms with the ability to keep some of that money local versus the state having control.
Right. Well, and the other thing is it's not costing the state any money
Yeah,
to do this.
okay.
So we just have to work very closely with the Department of Commerce.
Any
any
last
oth-
things?
Any other questions? No. Okay.
You know, I'll just say I appreciate, I've been looking forward to this for quite a while, having you guys in, and I say again, because I've sit in and I've heard some of it, so
Mhm.
I'm excited about the potential for a process. I understand there's a lot of work to be done, there's a lot of questions to be answered and all that, but I'll say it again, I think we have a great base of people. If it's gonna get done, that we're sitting with a base of people that'll make that happen. So I feel good about where we're at.
Well, I did have a legislator ask me if we were gonna come back for an additional years. And I said, in 65 years, I doubt very much that I'll be
Yeah.
here.
But you assured them that if you could, you would, right?
Yes. Well, my mother was 102 when she died, so I might be here.
Well, But you can just write a proxy to somebody else.
Yes. Okay, so I will give you copies of these bills.
Okay, thank you.
I have 3 copies here.
Any other questions for this group?
You want an off the wall question?
Do I have to answer it?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
And I've noted the changes that were in there.
Okay, thank
I
you.
know the changes.
Yeah, I've noticed that you can maintain a rural community ambiance with a 4-year institution, residential 4-year institution. Now, I know college degrees now are kind of, because of the great abuse of them, has now fallen on hard times, but this may be an opportunity. And I doubt it plays in with the PFD, but as my colleague says, things get done because of people like you. So is there any discussion ever in your groups about having, say, a BYU campus here?
We haven't taken it up relative to the fairgrounds and the Calhoun County Advanced Center. Probably the only thing I could say about that right now, we did have the college involved with us as one of our stakeholders as we were evaluating, the facilities and what we want to do there. But as far as a 4-year institution, I can't say that the board has had that conversation and whether or not that would be an opportunity here to also.
And I suppose I could I could tease you a little by saying this presentation would have gotten a lot easier if it started out with an explanation of the plans for the bicycles in this area.
Yeah.
I'm a cyclist, but there's something there to note with it. Something that when STP comes through, we find out this is not a bicycle friendly place.
Yes.
And it's not a bicycle friendly anyway. I bike north and invariably someone will be a little bit impolite and throw something at me. You know,
Are you sure it's because you're on a bicycle or maybe they just recognize you?
I sit corrected.
You know, I've listened to you long enough when you were talking about the trails there. I was going, these better be bike friendly.
Well, the other thing is if you do get involved in developments of bike trails, that there are bike trails are very different, whether they're for commuting purposes or not. We in this county do not understand commuting. When I lived in San Diego, I commuted every day on my bike. It was 10 miles each way. Prior to that, it was 19 miles. I commuted only 3 times a day. But anyhow, all that aside, here, one of the qualities that would really, I think, help Longview, we talk about it, but we're not orientated that way. Things are close enough that you could ride a bicycle, and things are close enough typically that you could walk, but we're not that kind of people. And then the climate here sometimes is the excuse, but there's always a reason why I find I don't need to exercise.
Well, I would agree with you. We need to do some work on our bicycle pedestrian friendliness around here too. That's something that's been a discussion. I know it's been higher on everybody's radar screen the last 10 years. And I think it's something that we have more work to do with.
As long as I'm pressing it, the city of Kalama has these new developments just south of this city on Old 99, I guess. Perfect opportunity to put bike lanes in there. Instead, they made it even narrower.
Hmm.
I think I only have bad words to say about it.
Well, Commissioner, again, I think that's all the PFD had for you today. I was just going to follow up on Betty's comment on the legislative session. We have, Norm has worked with your treasurer's officer. We've already engaged bond counsel to talk about if this legislation was passed and we got an additional 40 years of revenue, you know, what kind of bond capabilities that give us there. So that will be part of the discussions as we start looking at the potential, you know, recommendations, phasing and how we want to bring that back. So we're working on that there, and we look forward to the opportunity to continue to have dialogue with you and implement some more of our master plan.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate it. I know, I'll just ask for any public comment. If anybody has anything, I don't see any hands, so I just want to make sure. I've been scolded before for not asking. I think we're all good.
So would you refresh the last discussion where what is the next step for us interacting?
Yeah, we as a board need to go back and finalize the master plan, look at our phasing plan. We want to get some of this financing information as far as what our ability is to implement. And then we would come back with the PFD board, then as a PFD board would prioritize, finalize and prioritize the final master plan document. And at that point, we would, you know, come back to you and say, hey, we want to implement expansion and renovation of the current event center, or, you know, the equestrian center, but we need to come back step at a time once we have deliberated and finalized that, and then we'll be coming and do the ask. And that's where we'd have to come back, and the mechanism would be, as I understand it, the interlocal agreement that we already have in place, coming back to an amendment with the interlocal agreement. But we got to have those answers to you too, and how it's going to be paid
Excellent,
for.
appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you guys again. Thank you for participating. Thank you for coming up and chatting with us. Okay.
Shouldn't we put the Kim Bocut on the spot and ask her something? Oh, okay, I guess
All
not.
right. We'll let her off the hook today. Okay, with that, we will adjourn.
And the PFD is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.